Sean Strickland, congratulations. Sean Strickland has gotten married. Bit of a dick move, not inviting me, by the way. And I wanted to have come, I wanted to have come and crashed the wedding, but I would have sent a gift. I would have sent a very nice gift. I should have, Maybe he eloped, though. I don't know. I don't actually know. That's a joke. Congratulations to Sean Strickland. In the interim of being single versus being married, Sean has laid out a plan. And the plan, the map, to get him to the final destination of Khamzat Chimaev. The route looks like this. I got to get a win. I'm going to do it specifically over Fluffy Hernandez, who is the one and only guy that either Sean hasn't fought or remains currently unbooked. That will then qualify me for, I believe he called him the Chechnyan assassin or the Chechnyan wrestler, meaning Chimaev. Okay. First off, I love it. I love the mere concept of a fighter having a plan. I mean, the last time I can recall this is when Tom Aspinall laid a plan out and Surreal Gone ruined the whole thing. But Tom still got to the same location. He still got the same credit for creating the storyline, creating the round robin, creating the idea that it's down to us few and here's what I have to do. And I feel like Strickland did the same thing. I would also like to say this in Strickland's defense. He had the fight. Sean had the fight the same way as our community in many ways is trying to get Sarukian back to a world title fight. He was the number one contender who was never beat. Something happens before the scale. Match doesn't go off. It moves Sarukian into this weird, purgatory of what does he have to do to get out of this to regain his momentum. But I'll just remind you, Strickland in many ways is in the same spot. Strickland was the champion of the world. Chimaev had a fight with Kamaru Usman. It was stated prior to the fight, winner fights Strickland. Chimaev wins the fight. Media starts. It's Chimaev versus Strickland. It's on. In fact, it was scheduled for January and it was going to be in Vancouver 2 years ago. It ended up being Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. My point doesn't change. It's very hard to argue that Strickland isn't the guy for the job when he was already the guy for the job. It's very hard to argue that Strickland isn't the guy for the job. In fact, Imanov is next for Chimaev. When Strickland beat Imanov, it's very tough. Now, I don't dispute it. I support the idea that Imanov be given Chimaev. I understand the importance to parity. I just want to remind you, when Sean had the belt against his will, this wasn't Sean coming out and looking for. They're trying to build a fight. It's short notice. I believe it was 8 days in advance when Kamaru Usman steps into this thing as a way of building this brand new fight that's going to help to drive our entire industry on this specific night of pay-per-view. Strickland becomes a byproduct, which is whoever wins this fight, you're fighting next. All right, it's one of those things where you go, okay. Like that's what you do as champion. You go, oh, okay. But there wasn't a conversation. There wasn't a back and forth. There wasn't a meeting and a negotiation. Sean finds out that as a way of building and adding to a fight that was on short notice, that whoever comes out of it, he's going to be locking horns with. And by the way, to remind you, he said, fine. Then when it was done and it was Chimaev, Sean said, fine. Sean fully planned to fight Chimaev. And in that situation, in many ways, it's Sean that is being gracious. He's the one that's bringing the will. You want to fight for a world title? You need the world champion to show up. He said, okay. In fact, when they changed it on him at last moment and made it Dricus, Sean said, okay. It didn't make a bit of difference. So I'm only offering that in Sean's defense. I think that 185 pounds has never been so difficult. It has never been more stacked than it is right now. It's never got more studs at the top. It's musical chairs with that championship title. And even if you believe that Chimaev's going to hold it for a while, okay, fine, but he'll be the first guy to hold it for a while. Everybody else has been bouncing this thing around. It's just a very competitive and difficult division. And when you're a former champion, you're put in a really hard spot. When you're faced with the idea of parity. When you get faced with that idea, and you've already been there, and you've already had the opportunity, and you've already climbed the mountain, it just adds a notch. It just adds a layer. It's not insurmountable by any means, but there's a layer that you have to overcome. So, for Sean to believe that that layer is Fluffy Hernandez, who is red hot right now, sounds like a fair point to me. Seems like if you were to beat Fluffy Hernandez, you would be in a very good spot. And by the way, it seems like if Fluffy Hernandez beats anyone else, he should most certainly get a world title fight. The record for what you had to do to get a world title fight is currently 10. That was Merab. But to remind you, Merab was offered the title fight after 7. That was a lot. That was a lot for the community, but he was offered the fight. Sterling was there. Merab didn't want to fight Sterling, so ultimately he had to win 10. The reason I bring that up is Fluffy's at 8. So Fluffy's to get one more, he's at 9, and unless we're expecting him to tie the record, of which is a little bit misleading, at 10 by Merab, because after 7 he was offered, you got to give it to Fluffy. And I realize I'm running around here, but that's how this works. It turns into a fairly complicated game. And Strickland wanting to fight Fluffy, for one, done. I mean, right? Doesn't everybody sign off on that idea? Great idea. To act as though he should get something for fighting Fluffy, that makes a lot of sense. If we understand that whatever Fluffy does next qualifies him for a world title, then that would be another box that we would check for Strickland, because it would seem that if it's good for one side, in this case Fluffy, it would be good for the other side, in this case Strickland. All in all, I love the idea. I love the call out. I think he's likely to get it. I believe we're going to see Fluffy versus Strickland. But moreover, I respect the notion. I respect the storyline. I want him as credit for having the notion and laying out a storyline, and maybe even as a wedding gift. But I want him to get his way. I want Strickland versus Hernandez, #1 contenders match.